Left in Kentucky, the podcast of indivisible Northern Kentucky. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the wonderful month of March. Yay.
Ooh.
We are...
I think it's coming in like a lamb.
Yeah, it came in pretty nice.
It's pretty nice out there.
Yeah, it was
You live in a different world than I live.
Yeah, we're recording this on Sunday, so if Tuesday it's rainy when this comes out and you guys are looking out the window going, what are they talking about?
Crazy person, I promise.
Yeah, we saw you at the Northern Kentucky Democratic dinner.
That was supposed to be a topic we avoided, right?
Oh, okay. We'll avoid that. So anyway, this is Roberto Henriquez here with you.
Amy Ferguson.
And Dickerson.
And we actually have Ann physically here with us this week. Yay! Raise the party.
And we're twinsies, too. Look at
Yes.
Yeah, they both wore their Science-y shirts. So they have science
Without
shirts.
planning it, that's pretty fun. You can tell what was on our mind. Maybe it's a subliminal thing.
I think it's because we might have a nurse visiting us.
Yeah.
That may have been what was going through my
I was
muddled
actually,
little mind.
I was actually thinking more of the coronavirus. You know,
It's a good thing we have a nurse for our guest today.
We need science now more than ever.
Yeah, well, Mike Pence is going to take care of that for us.
Oh,
So, speaking of cow patties.
yeah, right. You can smell it from over here.
Oh, my God. It's going to be so bad.
It's time for one of our favorite segments each week, the Cow Patty Awards. And I think we have some real winners today. So,
Who wants to go first?
Yeah, who wants to go first? I always go last, so one of you guys.
Okay, I'll go first.
Okay,
All
you
right.
do
You
it.
know, I tried to avoid picking Thomas Massey again. I really did. But, you know, he's just so deserving of this award. Oh, Mr. Massey, why did you have to be an embarrassment to Kentucky yet again?
Right.
You know what they say, find what you're good at and stick with it.
Right. You know, it's one thing to be Mr. No all the time, but come on. The Emmett Till anti-lynching bill, what sane person votes against that bill?
You see, he finally said yes to something. He said yes to lynching.
Oh my goodness! No, people do not take that to heart.
Well, he voted against the bill.
I know.
Yeah, but
shame on you,
his
Mr.
rationale.
Yeah, because murder is already a crime, so there's no need to make another.
Because it's just as the same as a murder.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the same as a murder, Mr. Massey. It's a hate crime.
Right. And if you follow him on social media, I mean, the comments. Oh, my God.
See, I don't.
You should. It's worth the entertainment value alone.
Sometimes.
not.
Yeah.
I mean, this one girl commented on his Facebook post about it, you know, that murder is always a hate crime. She's like, I'm pretty sure if somebody murdered me, they hate me.
No, that's not true.
She's still alive,
Yeah,
so
but
that
see,
theory
here's the
doesn't
thing.
hold. Right?
Here's the thing. It took everything I had in my body not to type, well, in your case.
Right.
You know, because I'm thinking to myself, what about children that get murdered by stray bullets? Was that, you know what I mean? Or
Exactly.
There's all kinds of things that are not hate crime worthy.
Right. A drunk driver, I mean, while it's a terrible thing, but if you get hit by a drunk driver, that drunk driver doesn't know who you are from Adam.
Exactly. And somebody else made a comment, something to the effect of, well, this isn't the 1800s. And I'm thinking to myself.
True statement.
And yet we still have
You can read a calendar.
black, especially men, who get hung, but the modern version of that is much more frequently them being lynched and then dragged behind a car as opposed to swinging from a tree.
Yeah.
You can't. How many white people have you ever seen that happen to? So don't tell me it's not specifically a hate crime.
I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Okay, I got to get off your topic and your food.
Oh, she's pointing at me now.
Yeah.
So for that and many, many reasons, I will give Thomas Massey my cow patty.
Well deserved.
All right. And do you have
Okay, y'all
anybody
get
interesting
ready.
to talk about?
comes some
Everybody get comfortable.
Wait a minute.
Settle in.
Let me pull out my soapbox here. This week's, and this may extend for the entire session of the legislature.
Oh, I hope it does.
Yeah, it has to go to Senator Wheeler. I mean, seriously. The self-righteous indignation and then denials from his peers is just disgusting. I mean, I'm
So in case somebody doesn't know what happened.
I'm getting into
Okay.
that. I'm
ready.
so honored, so proud, thankful, finally, to have a governor who welcomes every Kentucky citizen to the Capitol, who treats them all equally with dignity and respect, and that's the way it should be. A true leader sets the example and sets the tone.
Yep.
Now here comes along Senator Wheeler, who decides to bash very publicly Andy Beshear's, Governor Beshear's actions in having his picture taken with the drag queens that were at the Capitol.
Yep.
To celebrate, there was a statewide fairness rally
Right.
at the Capitol, and that's why everybody was there.
Right.
And Andy Beshear is the first governor in the history of the state to have attended. And he didn't just, stand off to the side and have a photo op. He was in there with the people, hugging people, shaking hands, showing empathy towards their issues.
Yep.
Again, what a leader should do.
Absolutely.
And so Wheeler goes out and condemns him for it, tries to say that the Capitol is a place where we need to have proper dress and decorum. It was okay with him when the homosexuals decided to, overtake the Capitol.
Yeah. In their balaclavas and
Right. I mean, these people...
bulletproof vests and
They're so
camouflage.
scary.
Right. It's illegal to go down there and cover your face.
Yep.
You have to be able to be identified. They dressed like criminals. They acted like criminals. You had Thomas Massey down there with them, waving their guns in the air. I don't know what well-regulated militia that was supposed to represent, but that was some batshit crazy illegal stuff, and not one of them said a freaking word about it.
Yeah.
So Wheeler tries to backtrack, and it just kept getting progressively worse, right?
Right.
Because then you had Senate President Stivers got asked about it in an interview, and he's all, cannot come up with a comprehensive way to denounce what Wheeler said.
Right.
Basically trying to say it wasn't that bad. But that was then before the audio came out, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Of Wheeler at another event. This is outside of the newspaper article that went out, where he's talking about, they had
Horns.
demon horns and things made out of buckets of Kentucky Fried Chicken, and
And so everybody
And
understands, these aren't just regular drag queens. I mean, these are the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence.
yes,
It's a national organization. It's been around for about 40 years.
right.
And has a tremendous background of charitable work.
Right. Just one of their members has given more in their lifetime to society and charity than Senator Wheeler ever dreamed about.
Yep.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
I mean, the only charity that man knows is what goes in his own damn pocket. Right?
Right.
So, so he goes to this event where he's denouncing them and saying that that's, teaching children all of this negativeness and sinful behavior, and how everything gets tied to religion and all of that. But I'm thinking, gee, let's think about the teachings of Christ, right? Preach charity, preach love and kindness to all. Please demonstrate to me, point to me, show me, Senator Wheeler, how you are demonstrating any of that you understand any of that in the way that you behave in public and treat our Kentucky citizens.
Yep.
I mean, not only should he be ashamed, the people calling for his resignation are 100% right, because this is the third incident in less than a year.
Wow.
Yeah, and, I'm going to point to him to show my kids how not to act.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So he is, helping out with raising our children that way. So we can point out to how you do not treat other people
Absolutely.
that way.
I mean, it's night and day. And I've said repeatedly, this is the most divisive time in our politics.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I don't understand. I really need to sit down with someone and have them explain it to me if they can. I don't know how anyone can see the actions of the governor displaying all of the qualities that we should all want and that we should all aspire to show all people, how that's bad and what Wheeler is doing and saying is good. Because nowhere on this planet can anyone explain that to me.
Yeah.
I don't get it. And he should have to walk the sidewalks in public where he lives with his head down.
Yeah.
All the
He
time.
should.
We could yell, shame.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, whatever church he goes to, somehow, hopefully, it would be really nice if this audio would make it to there. But whoever leads that establishment should sit down and have a reinstructional lesson with him on the teachings of Christ.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, Jesus seemed to be okay sitting down with the people who were considered, the outsiders of society.
Right. The lepers. My God, Wheeler would set them all on fire.
The only people, if I remember my Bible right, the only people Jesus got really mad at were the money changers.
Yeah.
He flipped them tables, boy.
Yeah. So
He did.
everybody else, he was very understanding with. So take that for what that's worth. So Philip,
yours?
Mr. Wheeler, Senator Wheeler, well earned. That's Senate District 31 in the state. I did check. He does not have any Republican primary challenger. There are 2 Democrats running in a primary to face him in the general this year. So if you are as disturbed by Philip Wheeler's behavior, and we'll assume that the Kentucky GOP is just going to turn a blind eye to it like they normally do, there's some folks that might like some help in their campaigns after as we get to the general election. So if you're looking for somebody to get involved with, I guess that leaves it over to me. So we normally we leave our cow patties. We try to keep them, related to Kentucky and folks in Kentucky. And this one is related to Kentucky in a number of ways. So my cow patty goes out to Betsy DeVos.
She's a big pal.
We haven't done her in a while.
Yeah, I'm not sure she's ever gotten a cow patty from us.
I
Congratulations,
distinctly
Betsy.
remember one.
Oh, yeah.
It's been a while, though.
Okay. Well, we'll give another one. So as I think most people are hopefully aware, school vouchers have been something very near and dear to Betsy's heart, mainly because she makes money off of school vouchers and schools that use school vouchers. And she has promised a large sum of money to the state of Kentucky if the Kentucky legislature will pass the school voucher program.
It's called a bribe.
Yeah, it does sound very bribe-like, doesn't it?
It does.
So anyway, that's it's related to the presidential budget that was released, which had huge cutbacks in education, in public education, but then turned around and had large sums of money for school vouchers. So taking public money that we have all paid and will be paying in our taxes and giving it to private institutions. So once again,
That have no oversight.
I believe that's called corporate socialism. I think that's what that's called. Yeah, corporate socialism.
Oh.
So
The old CS
yeah.
rears its ugly head again.
So Betsy gets my cow patty for that.
Stepping in it.
Joining us now is Dr. Alexandra Owensby. Welcome.
Yay.
Yay.
Welcome.
It's such a pleasure to be here with you guys.
And Dr. Owensby is running for Congress. He is in primary for for District 4, Congressional District 4, and she has a primary coming up here in May. And the winner of the primary will get the honor of facing
My favorite.
our cow patty favorite, Mr. Thomas Massey.
I hope you own long boots.
Welcome.
She's not afraid to step
Welcome.
in it.
So why don't you start off telling us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to get into this race?
Sure. So I'm Dr. Alexandra Owensby. I grew up a couple hours away from here in Indianapolis, Indiana. I got my first bachelor's from Indiana University. It was a bachelor's in public relations with a minor in business. I started working in the restaurant industry prior to graduating and ended up falling in love with the restaurant industry. So I worked as an opening trainer for Texas Roadhouse for a number of years. And never...
Steak.
Yes, so good. I have to say it turned me into an excellent chef because, you had to try all this stuff every day. And so I used to have a very picky appetite until then, but it really expanded my taste. So I never really used my degree in public relations. I ended up moving down to Florida for a number of years and ended up in a marriage that was less than ideal. I ended up having 2 great kids out of it, though. And to this day, I'm a full-time single mom. So whenever I went to leave, I knew that I was going to need to support the children and myself because I wasn't going to get a lot of help from their dad. So I put myself back through school for a second bachelor's degree, and I got a bachelor's in the field of nursing, which was hands down one of the best things that I've ever done. I wanted to really help people, so I really looked at doing missionary work. And my church at the time actually is up here in Cincinnati, and they are Crossroads Church, and they were doing a mission trip to South Africa at the time. And I didn't know why. I knew I couldn't go on the trip, but I felt really called to, and I called and I talked to them about it, and I said, I don't know why I'm so thinking about this trip whenever I know I can't go, but I just feel like I need to call and talk to you about it. And what they told me was that what they really needed in future trips was nurses. And that was right at the time that I was going to leave, and I knew that I needed a career, and I'm like, that's it. And so I went back and I got my second bachelor's degree in the field of nursing. And I ended up working as a neurotrauma ICU nurse for several years, which was a great job. But in spite of being this really amazing job, I was making enough that my kids still qualified for free lunches at the school, and that my kids still qualified for Medicaid through the Children's Wellness Program. And I have to say, the Medicaid insurance that they had was some of the best insurance that we've ever had. We didn't pay deductibles on insurance. Whenever we went to the doctor, we didn't pay deductibles. We didn't pay for medications. Dental care was free. Vision screening was free. We had nurses call us up all the time and say, you've missed your preventative wellness visit. You need to get in there. What's going on? How do we get you in there? I'm like, oh, okay, this is awesome. It's the type of health insurance that every American deserves.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to stay on public assistance forever, so I ended up kind of working really hard, and I put myself through a master's and eventually a doctorate in nursing practice in order to become a nurse practitioner in the field of neurology. And again, I ended up getting a really amazing job that I work at University of Cincinnati. I'm a nurse practitioner in neurology. I work mainly inpatient in the hospital, but I also have a small outpatient practice a couple days a week. And again, it's this really amazing job. I do get great benefits with it, but I also have so much student loan debt as a result of going through 3 different degrees as a full-time single parent that honestly I'll never feel financially secure.
Right.
I still work 2 to 3 different jobs. That's my main job. I pick up extra clinic shifts on the side. I've worked down in Miami, Florida, doing neurosurgery down there on the side to kind of make extra money to try to make ends meet. Because I think that's one of the things that, our generation in particular has such trouble with is that, the education costs have gone up substantially since whenever our parents were in school. The cost of living has gone up substantially. And so all of these things make it so difficult to get ahead and become a self-sufficient, financially secure being here in America. And in my mind, that's not what our founding fathers had in mind. Our founding fathers had in mind that if somebody worked really, really hard, they could come here and they could make a success out of themselves and they could make themselves financially secure.
Yeah.
There have been studies that have shown that in order to get out of poverty, it takes 20 years of nothing going wrong ever.
Wow.
Good night, Irene.
20 years of nothing going wrong.
That's it, but something
you just
always
tanked
goes
me
wrong.
from now till the grave. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I feel I'm excited if I get 20 minutes without
Right?
something going
Right?
wrong.
That's it. That's it. And I mean,
Wow.
it's
Especially when you have kids, right?
that's it.
Oh, yeah.
Every couple of years something goes terribly wrong, it
Yeah.
seems like. And so, that was one of the main things that led me to decide to run for office, is the fact that our country deserves so much better than what the working and the middle classes are currently getting. You talked earlier in the podcast about corporate socialism, and that's the thing. We talk so much about we can't help the citizens out because that would be socialism, but right now what we're doing is we're helping the corporations out.
Right.
And if those corporations paid their fair shares in taxes, the rest of us could do so much better. I mean, whenever you look at student loans, the banks get loans of 0% interest from the federal bank,
Yep.
but students don't. And these are the people that are ultimately going to be paying into our tax system. And if we help them succeed and we help them get ahead, we're so much better than just helping the banks get ahead.
Yeah, I agree definitely. And I know, when I've used that term in the past, I mean, just in conversation, you get kind of a funny look from people because people just aren't used to thinking about it that way. They think of when they think socialism, they think of just, all the money gets redistributed to the people. That's all they think about. But what we're doing is we're redistributing money to the corporations. So it's
Correct.
So it is corporate socialism. I don't know how else you explain it.
Well, that's it. And I mean, whenever you see these super rich people and they're taking all of the tax breaks that they can and they're taking the offshore tax diversions and everything, everybody's like, oh, they're so smart. Those loopholes are there. They're just smart for using them. But whenever you look at people that are on food stamps and getting welfare, they're not considered smart for using loopholes in the system.
Right.
They're considered, banes and anchors on society. And we don't look at corporations and the ultra-rich the same way, which to me is such a shame.
Excellent. So I guess what are, there's obviously a lot of issues, a lot of national issues on the table. I guess kind of what are some of your top priority issues that you think need to be addressed immediately? Let's say you win in the fall and you're new in Congress next year. What would you like to see? What would you like to see tackled right away?
I think healthcare is something that has to be tackled right away. I mean, especially with the possibility of the coronavirus coming and being big here, we can't keep having people go bankrupt over healthcare bills. We can't keep using GoFundMe to get people healthcare and to be able to manage emergent disasters. So for me, in the healthcare industry, I think that is something that we absolutely have to address, and we have to address it urgently. I think it's going to take probably a few years to get a system down. Ultimately, I am for a single-payer system. I think that is the only way we're really going to get good quality healthcare in America is if we take care of people from birth, if the same insurance company is responsible for taking care of people from birth till death. I think right now, whenever we look at the way that Americans work, it used to be you graduated from college and you went to work for a corporation and you worked there for 40 years until you retired. And that healthcare system knew that they were responsible for taking care of you and your family. Mm-hmm. And then they were more invested in it. But right now, we have people that frequently go and they work for jobs and they work for 3 or 4 years and then they move on to a different company and they work there for 3 or 4 years. And the insurance company or the corporations, change the insurance carrier every few years based on the best deals. And so we kind of have something more now with insurance where people are kind of kicking the can down the road. And they're just trying to make sure that they avoid the next huge costly disaster with people rather than actually focusing on good health care and what's good for America.
So, so you say you're interested in ultimately going to a single payer system. I guess how do you see as far, is there still a private option, or you think purely a public option? Kind of dig into that a little bit for us.
I think ultimately we have to go to something where, there is no private option unless it's for supplemental insurance. But, I do get, the VA has unfortunately not always had the best, reputation for being a healthcare system.
Right.
And so I do think that as we're adjusting to the single payer system, there should definitely be a private option, because we want to make sure that people don't fall into kind of flaws in the system that were unrealized. And so I think probably as we're transitioning to a single payer system, it makes sense to have a private option as well to make sure that everybody's healthcare needs are getting taken care of and that the system doesn't get overloaded by all of a sudden having every single American underneath it.
Right.
So I think, it does make sense to probably have a private option for a few years with the goal of transitioning that out unless it's for optional care. I mean, one of the things that my friends and I have always talked about is there's several different people in life, right? Some people, like myself, I'm a do not resuscitate. So if I die, I'm in a better place. Let me go. There are other people, though, that really want to be kept alive no matter what the cost. They want to be on a feeding tube. They want to be on a ventilator. They want to prolong their lives for as long as they can.
Right.
And so, obviously that's where some big costs in the system come in. So how do we kind of reconcile those differences and make sure that people are getting what they want out of the healthcare system? And that's what I really still don't know as to how exactly we manage those differences.
Okay, excellent. Excuse me. So, one of the things that that I'm always getting on our state representatives about, and our state assembly in general, is unfunded mandates, and how are you going to pay for things? Where are we going to generate revenue from? And that's one of the things I like about Elizabeth Warren is I have a plan for that. I love that she has a plan for stuff, right? Which is like the ultimate Democrat thing, right? We love 10-page reports and plans and charts and
it's true.
Yeah,
we want to educate everybody on everything and give a full explanation on it all.
Exactly. And if everybody just understands
has the bandwidth for all of that,
and if everybody just understood what all these charts and explanations and everything, they'd get it. They'd be on our side. And I get it. Not everybody's that deep into it. But my point being that I'd be interested on, I guess on the revenue side. I know we talked a little bit about the corporate socialism and corporations paying their fair share. But when you look at a single payer system, there's a considerable expense there, and as well as transition, work on the transition. So maybe what are some of your ideas for kind of paying for that and generating money?
Sure. I mean, I think that whenever you look at the private healthcare system, though, there's a considerable expense in that. And so, like, whenever I look at what I pay in cost for the insurance for myself and my 2 kids, plus copays. I mean, I pay $50 copay for a specialist. Both of my kids have ADHD, so they have to go fairly frequently to, a specialist to kind of get the medications reevaluated. Plus, then whenever you look at the cost for the medications alone, I mean, last month I think I paid $80 with 2 very healthy kids for medications. And that didn't count the $120 that I paid to take them to the doctor. Plus, the maybe $500 that I paid for my insurance premiums. Plus whatever my company's paying towards my insurance premiums. And so whenever you look at the cost of the private healthcare system is quite expensive. So even if you do raise the taxes some on middle to working class citizens, you're saving that money in premiums, you're saving that money in copays, you're saving that money in medications. Just recently I went up to Washington, D.C. to lobby with the American Academy of Neurology for lower out-of-pocket prices on medications for Medicare Plan D. For Medicare Plan Part D, you can pay up to $6,350 before Medicare really kicks in if you have some sort of a catastrophe.
Good Lord.
Wow.
That's it. And, it's like $2,000 before really you even get into the donut hole. And then once you get into the donut hole, then you may pay another $1,500 before you get out of the donut hole. There's a lot of blood thinner as a neurologist, where you see a lot of strokes. And so we put people sometimes on blood thinners afterwards. Some of these blood thinners cost $800 for a 3-month supply.
Wow.
And so in January, people are going into the pharmacies and they're turning around and they're leaving empty-handed because they can't afford that $800 right off of the bat in January.
Right.
Whenever you look at the average price of Social Security, of what people get out of Social Security is $1,500. So if you go in and you have to pay $800, that is half of your income for the month. And that's just simply not feasible. So these people aren't able to afford their medications. They end up back in the hospital again because they have another stroke or whatever it is. We look at multiple sclerosis. There's been so many new medications that have come out about it. And in the 20 years since the old medications came out, what these old medications have done is raise their price to match them with the new medications that are coming out. So instead of seeing savings on the medications after they've been on the market for a while, they're actually going up in price instead of down in price.
That's insane.
And so what I do know
Greed.
is that the American people can't keep paying the cost of this healthcare system. We look at the people that argue for the healthcare system with the way it is that it's a free market economy, but it's currently not a free market economy because you don't have direct buying and selling. So you have the insurance companies are controlling prices. If you go in and you pay out of pocket, you're paying an exorbitant amount of money versus maybe $150 for something that the insurance company gets billed $30 for. And so we currently don't have a free market in that. So, if you raise the taxes some on some corporations that are already supposedly paying, I think my corporation says that they pay $700 or $800 a month towards my healthcare insurance. So if they pay a little bit more in taxes and I pay a little bit more in taxes, we're all still doing better in the long run because we're not paying those out-of-pocket premiums. And then we get into what really is a free market situation where we have one single healthcare system that's negotiating with doctors and hospitals in order to bring costs down and actually get a decent budget for all of us.
It'd be nice, if hospitals and doctors would at least post their prices. Here's what the things cost. But seriously, it's about the only thing in America that you buy that you have no idea how much it's going to cost you before you buy it.
Yeah, the cost of a bag of saline will just knock people over. And that's literally salt water that you could make in your kitchen.
Yeah.
Yep, that's it. It does have to be sterilized. I'll give them that, but you're correct. It shouldn't be something that costs $200 a bag.
Well, and the thing is, it doesn't cost everybody $200 a bag.
Yes.
It depends on who you are, what your insurance is negotiated. It may cost one person one price and a different person a different price, even though it's the same supplier. It's like walking into a McDonald's and them charging one person $10 for a Big Mac and charging another person $3 for a Big Mac.
And what I will say, though, with the healthcare system in regards to that is that, there is a lot of variability. So one of the big things that we're seeing now that's a problem with people that come in and they've had strokes is that the insurance company pays the hospital a set price, maybe $10,000 for if you come in and you have a stroke, they give the hospital $10,000 regardless of what type of testing you have done, regardless of how long you're in the hospital, anything like that. And so the problem that we're seeing is that these people that need to go to inpatient rehab where they get to work their muscles and they got to get, stronger after a stroke, which is what people need, they end up sitting in the hospital for an additional 4 to 5 days because we have to get prior authorization for these,
Don't even get me started on the prior authorization crap.
It's a huge problem.
I sense a story, Anne.
Oh, my God. Well, as someone who is a cancer survivor, here I am coming up. This month is 4 years cancer-free.
Yay!
Congratulations.
From pancreatic cancer, which anybody familiar with that knows what kind of a miracle that is. But to this day, 4 years out, when I go back for my routine checks and just to have blood work done, everything has to get prior authorization. And I don't know if the authorization has been received or not, by the hospital, because I get all my care at the Barrett Center over at UC. So, but then I'll get these messages, these 5,000 trees killed in mail, saying, oh, well, this was denied. And okay, here's me, I must have an ancestor full of Jewish guilt that I somehow attributed, that I sucked into my soul, because now I get, this mail and I'm feeling guilty, like I did something wrong, because they aren't getting paid for the stuff that they did. Because of this whole concept of quote unquote prior authorization.
Right.
It's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. And I have gone over there before, where one of the things that I have to get done annually is a CAT scan. And, because of the massive surgery that I had done, right? When they do a CAT scan on me, they do the whole midsection. So it's actually a full chest CT as well as abdomen and pelvis. Wow. Because they're looking to see, if there's any metastasis, if any new spots, and it could go anywhere in that area, right? And anybody who knows about a CAT scan, especially when you have to drink the dye and everything, you can't have anything to eat or drink for 4 hours prior as prep, right? Right. So I've even had the experience of going through all that and showing up there and them telling me after I did the 4 hours of prep, we can't do your test today because your prior authorization never came in.
That's ridiculous.
And so then it's like, okay, now what do I do? Well, we'll schedule you for next week and hope that we get it by then. And I get upset, obviously. Yeah. But it's not really the hospital's fault. This is all 100%, insurance company driven.
Correct.
Yep. And this whole bureaucratic mess.
And it's important to note that 90% of prior authorizations end up getting approved. It's just something that slows the people down from getting the care that they need.
Absolutely. And it's, now this is my opinion. I remember, because I'm also a former critical care nurse, so I remember the days when the system was doctor driven. When nobody ever questioned if a doctor ordered a test for you, whether or not you needed to have it done. Right. And then we went through that whole transformation in the 80s, where it went from being doctor driven to insurance company driven.
To being profit driven. Let's call it what it is. It's profit driven.
Right, yes. Because, but it's even more specific than that, because the doctors were the ones supposedly making all the profits before, and the hospitals and insurance companies wanted a slice of that pie. So, but we'd be here for years if we went down that road. But my point is, then the other part of that I hate is, so then trying to be a good citizen or whatever, conscientious patient, user of services, I get on the phone with the insurance company and I'm like, hey, what's going on with this? Why can't I get the prior authorization that I need? Do you realize what just happened to me? Taking all the time to prepare to go to my test, blah, 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 and turned away. And who am I left talking to? Karen.
Yeah, we know Karen.
We know Karen, don't we? So I'm left talking to Karen, who has no medical training, no medical background or knowledge, no nothing. She's nothing but a look up in her handbook what code it falls under. Mm-hmm. And if she can't answer you, then you get shuffled along to the next bureaucrat. Yep. Right? And then you get up to Shelley, who also has no medical background, no medical training. And these are the kinds of people who are making the arbitrary decision as to whether or not you get the services that your doctor says that you need. It's crazy. Yeah. Well, but I'm torn. and I'm not
Oh,
going to
no.
lie.
Here we go.
Because
Get ready for it.
not on that part of the system, but look at, just that small, teeny tiny example.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about going to a single payer system, I'm not necessarily 100% on board. Nobody has convinced me yet to be all in for Medicare for all. One of the reasons, because I think, and it's you described it perfectly, Medicaid for all should be the goal, not Medicare for all.
Mm-hmm.
So let's be very clear about that difference. But my problem is this: just in that scenario, when you switch to a system like this, both Karen and Shelley are going to lose their jobs, and that's just one teeny tiny minuscule example. And that's my concern when it comes to the economy and when it comes to switching. I understand what AOC and Bernie and all these other people say when it comes to how can we not go to a system like this. How can we not afford it when every other, industrialized nation except for us has it, blah, blah, blah. But these people are negating a history that needs to be taken into account, in my opinion. Since World War II, while we've been busy playing Captain America to the rest of the world and protecting the rest of the world, all these other industrialized nations were able to rebuild. It's why their infrastructure is so much better than ours.
Mm-hmm.
It's why many of their systems, including education, is so much better than ours, because they had all this time to invest in themselves.
Right.
It's a latitude that the United States has never been given. Right? And that's why we came to have this mentality that we do need to be the police of the world, that we need this super ultra military industrial complex.
Yeah.
So anyway, my point being that you've got to bring all of that together when you're talking about redoing an entire system that affects every single person in this country. You've got to consider the jobs that are going to be lost. What are you going to do with all those displaced people?
There's a plan for that.
Depending on who you're with.
Yeah.
There's a plan for that.
I think that's why there needs to be you're talking about such a major change, right? There needs to be a transition period.
Correct.
And, while those particular jobs with the insurance companies will be going away, other jobs will be being created.
And the good news for Karen and Shelley is that even though they'll lose their job, they'll still have health insurance.
Yes.
This is true. And I like to think, though, that Karen and Shelley wouldn't lose their jobs, because I don't think that if you go to a single-payer system that just says, we're going to approve everything all the time, no matter any test that anybody wants, because there are a lot of unnecessary tests. And, I can say, particularly in the U.S. health system, we practice a lot of medicine that keeps us from getting sued. And so you order a test, not because you truly believe the patient needs it, but because just in case something comes back somewhere down the line and it's something terrible. Yes, that's it. That's it. And it is exactly that type of medicine. And so I think that as we go to a single payer system, that, we are going to need the Karens and Shelleys of the world still to look at things and make sure that doctors aren't ordering unnecessary tests, because that's expensive to the whole system, but it's also inconvenient for the patients. As you talked about, the times that you show up for a CT scan and end up getting sent back home, a lot of people are taking days off of work, because let's be honest, you can only get medicine Monday through Friday for the most part.
Yeah.
And so you're losing those tax days, you're losing that income for people, which, I have to say, being in healthcare, I very rarely go to the doctor myself, because I get so few days off during the week. Those days that I do get off, I'm taking my kids to the doctor. I'm running around with them, and I don't have that extra time off of work and able to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
So, I think that healthcare is going to have to change in a lot of different ways. Telemedicine is one of the new things that's coming up that I think is really awesome. It would allow providers to work from home. It would allow people just recently in our district and over in Ashland, they had a big hospital shut down, Our Lady of Elephant. And it's a huge deal for them, because they're going to have to drive multiple miles now and a significant amount of time in order to get health care, as well as all of a sudden they're not getting their medicines filled because Mercy Healthcare Systems took over kind of this umbrella of the hospitals, and they took it over for the more profitable ones. well, the hospital in Ashland was not one of the more profitable ones, even though it definitely broke even, and so they decided that they're going to shut it down because it just didn't make sense for them to cover it anymore. That's happening more and more throughout America, where rural hospitals are shutting down, and these people are left without health care. So we're going to have to transition over to some other methods of healthcare, you know, whether it be telemedicine or anything like that. But kind of, I think, as the United States changes its demographic, we can't be left behind without, you know, kind of catching up with everything.
So let's kind of shift to a different area. Let's talk about foreign policy and what part. Well, you know, trying to cover some different areas.
No,
here.
it's great. I just went. Okay.
You know. Well, actually, you made me think of it, Anne, when you started talking about America being the world police. Right. So along that line, I guess, where do you see, you know, if you're in Congress, obviously, you know, you have a lot of influence on what we do internationally and what our foreign policy should be, in theory. So I guess, what do you see as America's role in world politics?
So I definitely agree with what Anne said, where she said, you know, we have to kind of look inwardly and make sure that we're taking care of our country, you know, instead of just taking care of all the other countries. But I think part of taking care of our country is that things around the world do affect us. We are not in this isolated bubble here in America.
Absolutely. And I don't want what I said to be taken as nationalism, because I'm definitely not there. The way that was worded, I was like, oh, crap, that just sounded terrible.
Anybody who knows you will know that you are not a nationalist. So
No.
Anyway, go ahead.
I agree. But, you know, I think that has to be taken into consideration, is how do the things around the world affect us, you know, with investing in the coronavirus, with investing in Ebola throughout the world. These are things that whenever they do get over here are going to cause significant impacts on our economy. And so we do have to kind of be cognizant of the fact that you don't want to cut off your nose to spite your face, per se. And so, you know, are we saving money by investing overseas in some of this stuff, or are we losing money? I do think that, you know, it is important to kind of take care of the current citizens. And, you know, of course, one of the big things that is a big topic is border control and how do we manage that. And I certainly think, you know, America is made up of immigrants. We are a nation of people that said, I am not going to settle for what I currently have in this crappy situation, and I am going to go and I'm going to fight and make it better. And I think that's one of the awesome things about America, is that in our very DNA is this resilience and this inability to settle for less than the best. You know, that being said, do I think that we currently have the support for our current citizens? No, it doesn't seem like we do. We've got a lot of people in America, even in Kentucky, that don't have access to clean water, that don't have access to health care, that don't have the resources that they need for drug addiction or, you know, to get all the food that they need and everything like that. And so can we really justify saying, let's open up our borders to anybody that wants to come in and needs help whenever we can't take care of our current citizens? And I think that, you know, that's one of the things that people struggle with the borders. Nobody wants people that are being killed and persecuted in their countries to be stuck outside of the United States and to not offer help to them. But nobody wants us to go ahead and go further in debt either to help out people whenever we can't even help out the people that are currently here. And so I think that's one of the balancing acts that you have to do whenever you're in office.
Okay. So I guess, how do you feel about, Amy, do you have something?
I have a question for you. I know that you've been traveling all around the state for months now, and talking to the people that you might not normally have been able to talk to before. Is there anything that you've found surprising in the things that people are saying throughout the state? Something that you didn't expect to hear a lot of, or anything like that?
I think the most interesting thing for me has been kind of because, you know, the district that I'm in is a very big district. So we've got, you know, the 3 kind of urban counties up here of Campbell, Boone, and Kenton. And then the other 17 counties are very rural. And so kind of hearing the different struggles and recognizing that the rural people are dealing with very different issues and have very different outlooks on things than the urban people do. You know, we are, of course, all concerned about climate change. But, the people up here in these 3 counties have very different ways of going about climate change than the people in the other 17 counties do. And so I think that's been kind of the most eye-opening for me, is just talking to the people and getting their perspective based on, even though we're all in the same district, people have very different lifestyles, they have very different concerns, I was talking to somebody recently about the bridge that we're looking at replacing and, possibly tolls for it and everything.
Right.
And it was somebody over in Ashland where their hospital's shutting down. And they're like, you guys have no idea how lucky you are to have the problem that you have too much traffic on your roads. And they were like, do you know what Ashland would give to have too much traffic on their roads and to need to have things replaced because there's so many people coming in and out and, contributing to its economy? And that, to me, was really eye-opening, is that, even though we are all technically underneath the same umbrella, there are different concerns in different parts of the country and different parts of the district.
Mm-hmm. So I guess you mentioned infrastructure and the bridge, and I appreciate what they said in Ashland and the lack of traffic over it and doing that. I'm not sure they'd be happy with the bridge that they're afraid to travel over because they're afraid it's literally going to fall into the river.
True.
So
That's
I
what I was thinking too.
I don't think they envy that part of the problem. But I get, infrastructure, there's a couple of things there, right? There's infrastructure and there's the infrastructure issue, and then there's the commerce in Kentucky issue, bringing businesses to different parts of Kentucky. So I guess I'd like you to maybe kind of address how you see those, how do we deal with our infrastructure issues throughout Kentucky, and most notably up here in District 4, obviously the Brent Spence Bridge is the big issue. And then maybe talk a little bit about attracting businesses and how we attract businesses to new investment in Kentucky.
Sure. So, I think in infrastructure, we kind of touched on it earlier with the whole corporate socialism, right? And so you've got Amazon up here. We've got a pretty big hug for Amazon, but yet they're paying nothing into federal taxes. And, the infrastructure problem is not just a problem here in Kentucky. It's a problem all around the United States. And so I think that if we actually have the corporations that are using our roads, that are using our infrastructure, but aren't investing back into it by paying taxes, actually paying their taxes and paying their fair share, then I think all of a sudden it becomes very easy to pay for all of these things. And so I guess I would say that in the way of infrastructure would be a big thing. I also think that we need to kind of, with Northern Kentucky and Cincinnati, it shouldn't just be a Kentucky problem to replace bridges and all of this. So I think that we do need to kind of come up with some sort of a collaborative system between Ohio and Northern Kentucky in order to fix that problem and kind of decide how we're going to deal with it as a one community that shares all of these resources. I have heard people talk about, does it make sense to maybe open up a casino down here? You got a lot of people that already travel over the bridge to Ohio to the casinos. Mm-hmm. Does it make sense maybe to open up a casino or do a lottery where you're using that tax to pay for the Brent Spence Bridge and kind of do it that way? I'm not the biggest fan of gambling, I do have to say, but it is an option because since people are already going over there, it's not like this is something where it's not open to them at all. Mm-hmm. I think you do have to kind of think about some different options like that and kind of try to think outside of the box in order to do the infrastructure. Okay.
Because, it used to be that right when the interstate system was first put in and everything, 80% of the financing came from the federal government, and and as well as maintenance of the of the national highway system. Mm-hmm. And only 20% of it came from states and local municipalities. And now we're in a situation where that's been turned completely on its head, and we only get about 20% of the funding from federal funds and 80% of the funding from state and local funding. I guess, do you see any way to maybe change that?
I absolutely think that it needs to be changed. I mean, kind of like we were talking about the cost of medicines, and I'm like, I don't know necessarily where the cost of medicines is going to come from, but what I do know is that it can't come from the people. And it's the same thing with our infrastructure system. I live over in Fort Thomas, and we have a big highway there, Highway 8, that goes kind of along the river, and it is currently just in complete disarray. And it was a busy road that a lot of people used, and the rumor is that it's just not going to get fixed because there aren't the funds for it. And so this road is shut down, and there's all these people that have to go significantly out of their way now because they lived on that road. And, it's the same thing with this, is that, the federal government needs to be looking at, can the states pay for this or not? Because if the states can't pay for it, then they need to be stepping in and they need to be helping us out. I mean, the federal government always has money for anything that they want to fund. They have the Department of Treasury. They can come up with money for anything that they feel is super important.
Right.
And so
military's never had to hold a bake sale to make an aircraft
once.
carrier. We're trying to build that aircraft carrier. We need to sell more cupcakes.
Right.
That's it. And, so I do think that we do need to be looking at ways that we can save from the federal budget and investing it back into the states so we can take care of these infrastructure problems, so people have clean water, so people have access to roads. I mean, you were talking about how do we bring commerce to Kentucky? Well, the first thing is we have to have the infrastructure to bring the commerce, right? Because if you can't build new roads, if you can't maintain existing roads, if you can't get clean water places, then you can't get businesses to come into these communities.
Right. The other part of that, too, to add under that blanket umbrella of infrastructure, is internet access. We still have parts of Kentucky where you cannot get internet access. And with the way the economy is going now, and so much turning into online businesses, online jobs.
Yes.
It's really cutting off a significant portion of people in the state who can't access any of that. Mm-hmm. So that has to be, and that's been a priority, for what?
Decades. I mean,
well,
really.
it's three gubernatorial cycles now.
Right.
Because that goes all the way back, I believe, to Steve Beshear's first term.
Yeah.
So,
But, like the federal highway system, new utilities, whether it was the telephone system or electricity, when those were first established in the country, there were large amounts of public investment to make those programs to get those programs initially implemented.
Right.
If none of those programs would have been near as successful if it had been, private industry has to do all that.
Correct.
Private industry has to do all the infrastructure run. I mean, that's how you get like the TVA, right? Tennessee Valley Authority. And so when, I'm kind of shifting here a little bit to specifics of infrastructure to new energy, right? Whether it's solar or wind or whatnot. Again, there needs to be a public I believe there needs to be a public funding commitment to those new technologies to make those utilities available to folks, just like with internet. So I'd ask you, what do you see the federal role being in that?
Well, absolutely. And I think that, that's an investment that's well spent. I mean, we always think about making sure that we have a balanced budget. But whenever you do pay into the internet system, for example, then all of a sudden you have this generation of kids that has internet growing up. They have that access to it in school, which is going to then help them become more successful in the future and have better jobs. The same thing with, Anne was talking about the fact that so many people now can work from home and they can work from anywhere. Well, whenever you look at bringing, people into Kentucky and businesses into Kentucky and revenue into Kentucky, because we are becoming, a lot more of an environment where people can and increasingly are working from home, they can do it from anywhere in the United States. Kentucky has such amazing landscapes. The cost of living is fairly reasonable here.
Yep.
And so you're going to get a lot more people and a lot more revenue into the state if we have that infrastructure available. And so I think it's up to the federal government to help make sure that throughout America that the infrastructure is available, because that's going to come back to them in taxes.
All right, excellent. So let's see. I think we're about ready to wrap up this segment. Anybody have any last points they want to bring up?
You could mention any events or anything that you have coming up, or where people should go if they want to find out information about you.
Well, definitely my website. So www.am, as in Marie, which is my middle name, amowensby.com. So they can always check that out. We've got a number of different events coming up. I am going to be at the Senate Candidate Forum on Thursday.
Nice.
Checking that out. I think you guys are going to talk about that in just a little bit. And then I'll be at the Wendell Ford dinner this weekend down in Louisville.
Nice.
But certainly if anybody has any events in their community, I am always open to coming out and meeting with people. So if there's any big community events coming on, just drop me a note on my website. That's www.amowensby.com.
And we will put that in the show notes, so
I will
you can check that.
Try to be there. So thanks so much for having me on, guys.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here.
Have a good one.
That's going to about wrap it up for Left in Kentucky this week. And before we go, we'll talk about a few of the things we've got coming up. It seems like there's something going on this Thursday. What was that again?
We only talk about it incessantly.
Yeah, that's right. Our Senate Candidate Forum at Southgate House Revival.
Woohoo! Sold out.
It is sold out. We have sold out the event. We do have a wait list online. You are welcome to go to the Eventbrite site and add your name to the wait list. If we have people cancel, we will release tickets as that happens. But I do not expect much of that to happen. There's been a lot of interest in this event. There will be some media folks there, definitely from around the state. They're also getting some national media attention on this, so we look forward to that. We do have our live stream of the forum on Thursday. We will be live streaming on our YouTube channel, Indivisible NKY District 4, and you can subscribe to that. I highly recommend you subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yes, please.
We do post. We also post our. We do also post our podcasts there, but we will be live streaming that on Thursday, starting a little bit before 6:30. We'll start the stream just a little bit early so that people can get all set up. We do know there's a couple of groups that have been setting up watch parties from around the state.
Yes, and that's what we're encouraging. We're encouraging everybody who cannot make it to hold a Ditch Mitch watch party where you sit together, you watch the forum, and then afterwards, whichever candidate you think did the best, donate to their campaign.
Do it.
Yep.
That's hilarious. And we do know that we have groups in California. We have groups out in the Oregon and Washington State area. We have groups in Illinois and the Chicago area. We have groups in New York. We have groups, all over the place that are planning on holding these watch parties because, yes, Mitch McConnell is our senator, but he's a national nightmare. So everybody across the country is
begging us to get rid of him.
Yeah, and has a vested interest in seeing that happens. So jump on board, whether you're in Eastern Kentucky, Western Kentucky, Central Kentucky, or North, East, South, or West of the country. Set up a watch party. Get as many people as you can. This is not, we need to make it clear to people it's not a debate.
Correct.
We wanted to avoid some of the most common pitfalls of the presidential, Democratic presidential primary.
That last one was so painful.
And so our candidates are not going to be going back and forth at each other at all. This is intended to be a deep dive on the issues. So hopefully, it'll be much more informative for all the people that are voting as well as people across the country. And hopefully, they'll distinguish themselves enough from each other that clear choices can be made.
Yeah, our instructions to the campaigns were, your answers should be about how you would fix or address or enhance what you would do with the question, how you would handle it. And they've been asked not to address each other, and this is time for them to be able to get their message out about what they would do. So, and we plan to keep them to that. It's going to be hosted by Ryland Barton from Kentucky Public Radio.
I'm real excited about that too.
We're very excited.
Yeah, I'm very happy to have him be part of it. So definitely looking forward to that. And yeah, it's I think it's going to be really interesting. So make plans. I will post I'll post the link to our YouTube channel in the information for the podcast here when I post this. But you can also go to YouTube and search Indivisible NKY District 4, and that'll bring up our YouTube channel. And other than that, I'm sorry, do you have something, Amy?
I was just going to say, for those of you who are listening that are going to be there on Thursday, make sure you come by and say hi.
Yeah, look us up.
We want to know that you're listening.
Absolutely. So in the session, we're about a little over halfway. We're at 37 days into the session. So day 38 is tomorrow, Monday, because we're recording this on Sunday the 1st. Monday the 2nd is the last day for new House bills, and Tuesday the 3rd is the last day for new Senate bills. After that, they have to rip out the language of an existing bill and completely replace it with something different.
Which they will.
Like they did
They've
with
never done anything
always
like that
done that.
before.
You know,
Are you kidding me?
It's like what they do.
There was never a sewer bill about that.
That's what they do.
They've never opened their Bible and ripped out pages from there and stuck it in a hollowed out House bill. I mean, come on.
Nice.
I got a T-shirt that's got that right on there, picture of it.
So most of the month of March is taken up with legislative days. We expect a lot of discussion about the budget. I think most of the remaining time is going to be taken up with budget stuff.
Well, and before we end today, I do have one blurb.
Okay.
It's going to be real interesting because on our last episode, we went at great length over House Bill 1.
Yep.
Which, much to my extreme displeasure, has passed the legislature strictly on party lines.
Has it passed both houses?
I think it has.
I think it did.
So now, because I know in several places I've been very vocal, Governor Beshear should veto this bill. Now granted, they have a supermajority to override his veto, but then if they do that, they're going to own it hook, line, and sinker for all of the terrible things that are still included. But anytime you have to try to tack 15 amendments onto a bill, it's time to scrap it. Yeah. And they chose not to do that. So I'm very upset, very disappointed with 100 different organizations against the bill, with our group and the podcast and all the information that we tried to put out there about how horrible it was, that it still passed anyway. It just goes to show you this is much more about an agenda than it is about actually doing good for people.
Yep.
So back off my soapbox.
That's okay. Alrighty, so I guess that's going to about wrap it up for this week in Left in Kentucky. We appreciate you guys joining us online and listening to our podcast.
Thanks for listening, honey.
Come back and see us again.
Spread the word, share it with your friends, download it, send it to everybody you know. Subscribe if you haven't subscribbled.
Do it.
Follow us online, but don't follow us in real life, because that's stalking. Left in Kentucky, the podcast of Indivisible Northern Kentucky.